Hey Alice, welcome back. You came at a good time. We have David Pena.
Hello.
Um, David, you know from literally every other Rabbit Hole podcast, a book club regular. You've been on Behind the Curtain. You've been on Chaos Council. But this is actually the first time you've been on this show. So good to have you.
Thank you.
And also one of my best friends in the whole world. I love me and David stay up talking till like 3 in the morning,
Even though we shouldn't.
even when we have to work the next morning when we definitely shouldn't do that.
It's like crack.
Yeah. And providing backup, we have the March Hare himself, Mr. Neif Walker, joins us as well.
Hey Alice, I'm coming in via satellite tonight.
Yeah. So we got some it's all family here tonight. We don't have any external guests at the table. And what brings us here is David called this council this evening. So I'm gonna give you the floor. What are we talking about tonight?
We're going to be talking about Trump's tariffs. Um, First, before we continue, I kind of just want to get how do you feel about them, Neef? I just want to get that first.
Well, when it comes to tariffs in general, and I gotta look at the system, you know, and Alice is very familiar with where I come from on this. So, um, when it comes to trade and commerce, if you've got a system set up, it's much like the Constitution is here. You know, I think that if that's what we're going by, we need to go by that, regardless of what my beliefs are. Same way with tariffs. If that is the way trade has worked and always worked, that's the way it should work across the board. So I understand completely where Trump's coming from, talking about we've been being ripped off as a nation by other nations for years, and that's the truth. I've known that. He didn't have to tell me that. I've seen that happening since I was late teens, But I'm not against that if that's the system. I understand the reasoning behind import export tariffs because you do want to domesticate your capital as best as you can. In other words, you want to keep your money in your country and you want to bring outside money into your country. You don't want as much of your capital leaving your country, you know.
Yeah.
So, and that's kind of but then you get into the ism in capitalism. It's like, well, how much does a country have to own? How much do we have to do this back and forth? And that kind of just gets in as far as I'm concerned, fairness. It's like, what is fair. And obviously, with the new world order style governments we have going on that are all based around the money being moved around major markets, it's not fair. It is obviously scaled toward them, and laws will get passed to prevent people from doing what they want or allow other people to do what they want.
But then here's a question. As an anarchist, aren't you against taxes?
Oh yeah, yeah. Well, um, I'm highly against taxation
But
because
isn't a tariff a taxation on American people?
not necessarily because people, and that can be looked at. Taxation is when you are forced to pay money, and that doesn't mean um like sales tax is taxation, but it's not actually taxation to the people because a merchant doesn't have to charge you sales tax. The merchant can charge you whatever he wants, but he does have to pay that. What they do is they let you know as a sales gimmick to say, hey, this is $1.99 plus the tax because we're going to tell you we're not charging you that much. we've got to tack on this amount. The government doesn't care if you add that in on the price you put up. It's all about what you pay. So it's the same concept. It's IRS reaches into our pockets and takes our money.
Yeah.
So that is theft to me. All taxes like that. A tariff is telling an outside country or a business that is from or represented by an outside government, you have to pay a fee to sell your goods in our area. It's very similar to a vendor fee when they come to a show, because what's happening is I throw a concert, I have people coming to pay money to me for that concert. Okay. That money is what I am making from it, which pays bands and all my other stuff, whatever.
Yeah.
If I have vendors come, that entices people to come a little more, but that's not what they're coming for. Now, what the musicians and the people that I have to pay are doing is a set thing. They know what they're going to get paid. A vendor coming is going to be setting up and pulling money away from potential t-shirt sales. So, to counter that, you're saying, I'm allowing you to make money in my venue,
Hmm.
which I recognize is going to be counterproductive of me making money. Because, yes, it might entice people to come here, but they are still going to be paying you money for beer and pizza rather than paying the musicians or the bands that are here for t-shirts. And so it's causing their market or their ability to make an income to go down, and they should be first because they're the reason I put this together. The same way with a country. I have a country here, I have people here who are trying to survive and keep our internal income happening, our trade and everything. If you come into this country from another country to sell goods, the money that you make is going back out of the country. So the population doesn't maintain that money.
But we
And
maintain the
they're
goods.
do it.
We maintain the goods. We get goods in return.
Well, that's the thing is you do that by trade in general. If somebody orders something, right?
Yeah.
The whole idea is the goods, if they are imported goods, that gets into what is doable here. And then that's when you can get into a lot of what gets tariffed and how much gets tariffed for what reason, you
Okay.
know. Now, much like everything, it's nuanced, you know, because as far as I'm concerned, we should have free market,
Which I
but we
believe.
can't, but we do not have free market, and nobody in the globe has free market, and even the global market isn't a free market. So, if it can't be that way and is not going to be that way, you can't maintain being the only country that has the freest market because you get swamped by everybody. See what I'm saying?
Yeah, but it
You
doesn't really
get
get rid
bled.
of it doesn't get rid of the swamping though. It's just more
Well,
swamping.
what it is you get bled dry. Everybody else takes advantage because they're not a free market, but you are, and that's been happening to us. We've been more wide open about our market, and other countries aren't.
Yeah, but
In other
why?
words, um, because it's more profitable.
To who?
The other countries.
No, not just them, even to us, to Walmart.
Well, Walmart isn't here anymore. Walmart's been in China, or most of the companies it bought, because Walmart turned into in the 90s when there's a documentary I watched in the early 2000s on PBS called, the title was, Did Walmart Ruin the American Economy? And when they went to, they went and discussed basically the trade output. with the head of the Los Angeles docks, basically, where goods are shipped out, and they said that at that time we were sending out something like $3 billion worth of raw materials, or I think it was like $2 billion, $3 billion worth of raw materials, maybe millions, I don't know at the time, and they were sending back 300 million or $1 billion worth of goods, which that's a trade deficit to us. That means 298 million or billion doesn't come back to us. We don't keep those goods because Bill Clinton had allowed China into the world trade. We never did that before because they were unethical. They had sweatshops, they didn't pay people enough, they made what we considered to be, they polluted. So when he let them in the World Trade Organization, everything got cheap. Walmart's exploded. Walmart started buying up companies and moving them to China because now companies could open up in China, pay people less money, use crappier goods, pollute the crap out of everything, not have to pay all this stuff, and send their goods right over here. And the American people ate it up because we're a consumer population and everything went cheap. Walmart went through the roof and they started bankrupting companies that didn't want to play ball with them.
So
So,
here's I'm gonna put my case now. I
yeah.
don't disagree with anything you've said at all. All the points you made are true. And I feel like Trump is like benefiting from people like you or even more people by lying about what his actual end goal is. The issue is these tariffs are just targeted towards three countries: China, Mexico, and America. I mean, China, Mexico, and Canada. Because we somehow think that by tariffing these people, now we're going to start developing these goods, but we're not. What makes more sense? Do these companies now make their stuff here, or do they just make it in India?
Well, see, that's the other thing is when it comes to Trump's tariffs, I don't know specifically because I haven't seen the write up on
Yeah.
what he's doing. I've just heard the hype.
Okay. I'll explain what it is, and then
Well,
I want your reply after that. So
all right, that's what's up.
here's what it is. It's 25% on Mexico, 25% on Canada, 10% on China, and what he's lying about, he's saying that it's a tax on them. It's actually a tax on us. It would be like a tax on people buying from those places. Like that's directly like what it is.
An
From
example
what I,
it would be like the companies buying it. Like
Like if Walmart wanted to buy cheap goods from China, they have to pay the tax.
so
Walmart pays
not
the tax.
yeah, so not Walmart's not a great example because it's owned by China, but a
well,
company
it's not necessarily owned by China.
okay. So company
They
in America buys foreign goods. The company gets taxed
Yep, the
by
company
the
gets that.
American government.
Yep.
Okay.
well, it is like that in a degree, from what I understand, and it's not the that's what I haven't heard, and I'm surprised that China is so low at 10%. I thought that he was gonna nail them for like 100%.
No,
He was
instead he's focusing on our neighbors.
well, I know that he had told John Deere, who has not been in America for years, was an American company, big time, and has not been here for years. They were going to open a plant in Mexico, and he said, if you do, everything you sell here is going to be tariffed. And the whole idea is tariffs are the company being charged to import the good.
Yes.
So if it is an American company, the whole idea is what he's saying is if you're actually an American company, your company should be in America and you should have domestic American citizens working for you. And that's the incentive because now I agree absolutely that a government is not here to create jobs, right? And
Yeah.
that's why I got to go back to what I say when I say A lot of this doesn't line up with my belief in free market, but I agree that if we have rules set up to do this kind of trade across the globe, then we should be pushing for much more fairness to the country to keep our economy here. I do think that we need not, I don't think the government should be creating jobs, but I do think that labor, manufacturing, research, and development are extremely vital to a nation that's trying to grow. It should not be outsourced just because most of people are consumers and they don't really want to take the time to go do some stuff, you know? And that's what we're getting the label as. And the rest of the world just looks at us like the place to sell shit to. And
Yeah, we take all these imports. We don't really send anything out.
we nobody buys our cars hardly. We buy that's one of the major things is car manufacturers is they'll sell millions of cars, thousands and thousands a year. And that's one of my big problems as car manufacturers because they do quote unquote create jobs, but the problem is they make so many cars every year and then they got to sit on lots and then they got to shove them off somewhere so they can make the next year's models because if they don't sell them, they still have to pump out the numbers because they cannot lay people off. And that's the problem with major manufacturing like that because you lean the economy on that shit. And government should not be involved in those things. Those companies like that should be allowed to fail, you know?
Yeah.
So it's kind of, I don't necessarily agree with a lot of shit that goes on with trade, but I absolutely do think that as a country, we've been getting taken highly advantage of for years,
Oh, for sure.
in the in world trade,
But here's
and so I've
here's
got
here's my
no
issue. Here's
problem.
my issue. Here's my issue. My issue is I think we're framing this all in the wrong way. We're framing it like we're at war with these other countries and they're making us like we're making them the enemies when it's not them. It's our own companies.
I can understand that. Um, and I mean, I can agree with that on a level. To me, it has to do with specific countries. Um, and I don't have enough info up to date now because I don't keep up with it like I used to. Um, but with me, it starts ecologically. Who is polluting the most? From what I understand, it's India and China.
Yeah.
And the way I had no problem with, and this is, and it is like you're saying, we're not at war with them. And I've often said this is that we lost World War III. People never saw it happen. That's when China leveled over 40,000 American factories without dropping a single bomb. And they did that economically when we allowed them into the World Trade Organization.
Yeah, I think
They didn't do it. They didn't do it. We did.
Well, well, right. Companies went over there, but what they did do is they allowed polluting. They allowed low cost labor, virtual slave labor, and very, very bad practice, which we should not, we should not,
try to compete with.
no, we should not support in any way. And
Yeah.
that's how we were. It was like, we're not buying nothing from y'all or trading with y'all because y'all don't pay y'all's people shit. Y'all pollute the crap out of the world and y'all don't give a shit about doing things right, apparently. And that is how you're supposed to economically fight each other. That's the whole idea is that if you want to make major change and everybody's like agrees we shouldn't be polluting the oceans. Okay, we'll find out everybody that's polluting the oceans and stop doing trade with them. And then they're forced into having to say, well, it's kind of like people that are conscious about what they eat, I don't I will look at the source of my food because I don't want to support a company that doesn't have good ecological practices. And if everybody practiced that, then crappy companies would close.
Yeah.
But a lot of people are like, hey, I really don't feel like going through all of that. I'd rather just pull through this window and buy some crap food, you know? So it is like you're saying, it's not their fault, but they're not good guys in the world of trade and production, you know? And America is not the greatest when it comes to that either. I got my own issues with the way we process things and the way we pollute, you know? But when it comes to that, that's where I start from. I don't think we should be doing trade with them at all. If they can't be ecologically sound, I don't think we should do trade with anybody that pollutes the crap out of the oceans.
And I don't
Because
disagree, but I don't disagree with that. The issue is if it's not China, it's India. If it's not India, it's going to be Africa.
I want to
We're not
address.
we're not we're not targeting the actual problem itself because we keep making the wrong enemies and we make that the fight.
I
Trump
want.
Trump Trump is not going up there and saying, "Hey, our companies are fucking us over by getting cheap late by using cheap labor." Instead, it's China's fault.
I want to address something you said earlier. Um, you were saying we're not at war with other countries. We're at war with consumers are at war with big business, basically. And I think two things can be true. We're getting fucked over by big business, but also all of these world powers are vying for control with each other. So America as a country is in a, for lack of better terminology, trade war with some other powers, and also uh, unregulated business is fucking over citizens. And there is some, to Neef's point, there is some responsibility on the consumer to do some research and like be ethical with what you purchase. But point I'm trying to make is that two things are true here.
yeah, I
It's
mean,
one or the other.
I agree. It's not. And David, you're not saying really a lot that I disagree with necessarily.
No, and same to you.
It's one of those things where this has to do with my specific thoughts on, let's say, the way a specific game is being played that I don't necessarily agree with this game. I don't necessarily agree with the way this game or these rules are laid out, but if I'm following these rules, I see this as a positive move for this side of the play. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I don't see it as, and I don't think that Trump is necessarily a good dude and has completely, just everything is, it's all about bettering America. Obviously, he's got his interests in line. I don't think that it's, oh, he's trying to make even more money. What it is with people that have that much money is it's about maintaining the ability to keep that value because it's not cash value, it's market value of people. Elon Musk is the most valued dude in the world. It doesn't mean he has the most cash. Now, granted, he's got ridiculous amounts of cash, but he just has a lot of companies that are worth a lot of money. So he's worth a lot of, you know, and so maintaining that has to do with politics. And Elon showed us that with the SEC getting onto his ass for the past 10, 15 years. He'd do shit and the trade commission hated it and he'd get fined. And there's that shit happens all the time. We just don't hear about it because the news is politicized. And if you're a big business and there's no reason to talk about you, they're not going to bring up how much you got fined by the SEC, you know, how many companies you had to bankrupt under your name, you know, that last year, all this stuff that people talk about and they don't have any idea what trade on that level has to do with, And meanwhile, every fucking politician we got is taking money from every fucking major. corporation. And, and then we're blatantly watching it with RFK getting grilled by a bunch of politicians about why are you going after big pharma? And why are you defending them? Oh, we don't have to ask why you're defending them. Look at y'all's income from them, and it's so blatant. It's the same kind of thing, so it's very much about taking money out of politics.
Yeah,
And
but tariffs are just more money towards politics.
well, that's money controlled by politics, it's trade controlled by politics.
Yeah, those tariffs,
So,
the tariffs, where does all that money go to?
well, like I'm saying, if we're playing by these fucking rules, I see this as a positive move for this country, because it is an economic war. Trade has always been a war. That's why when Trump wrote Art of the Deal, he based it off of the art of war. And if you go to business college, any business college worth their salt is going to tell you read the art of war and apply that to business because it is about gaining more money than the competition. And competition is good.
So, something you showed me before we got started was a video from Reagan, a public address from Reagan in 1988, basically attributing the Great Depression to protectionism and um, trade war,
It
treating
was
other countries like
it
it's a
was
trade war.
it was called the Smoot-Hawley Tariff Act, which happened in the 1930s, which pretty much made like the Great Depression worse. And it led to a bunch of layoffs. People started starving because of those tariffs because they were like way too hardcore. I I don't completely oppose tariffs. The issue is I feel like we should focus on building the infrastructure first before we go there. Otherwise, you won't find like the good solution. Like that's why I'm saying I don't oppose to what you're saying. It would be like imagine trying to build a commune, right? And the whole point of your commune is you want to be like self-sufficient, but you want to be self-sufficient first before you cut everything else off. And it seems like we're cutting everything else off first before we become self-sufficient.
You're saying we don't have the infrastructure or
The
the
factories
manufacturing to
to really pull this off.
be
I
dependent
can,
on American
I
goods.
can, I can agree with you there because yeah, it is a problem that, and it's not just the infrastructure either. It's the people, it's the manpower. The past 20 years, we haven't had people trained to go work in fucking warehouses. The youth of today
Factory.
doesn't, yeah, nobody does that shit. Nobody trains that, to do that shit anymore. So, um, that's very much an issue we've run into, and that's part of the consumer mentality. And that does go back to our own responsibility, you know. And I think that we need to look at what goods we're getting from who. The main issue I have with China is we get so much food from them. And a lot of people don't know this that during the pandemic, when we had food shortages, farmers were being told to turn their crops and euthanize. And we had, ships sitting out at sea that couldn't come in and bring stuff, and they're freaking out. We are under contract with companies in other countries that we have to accept a certain amount of goods via this contract. So therefore, they could not have more food here being produced. So they told domestic farmers to turn their crops, and they were going, why? I thought there was a food shortage. And they said, you cannot sell. The farmers get shit on by our own government all the time, and that's one of the reasons why. Because we have these crazy trade deals set up with other countries that screw our own domestic product out. I don't think that anything that we can grow here, we should have to purchase elsewhere. If it's exotic stuff that we can't grow here, well, that's one thing, you know, but we can sustain our own food here, our own
Scott.
standard food,
Okay, but
you know.
how about this? What if there's a conspiracy where like the reason the government was okay telling our own farmers not to do that is because they wanted an excuse to raise the prices. Because once you raise prices, it's harder to like put them back down again.
I think that's absolutely why that happened.
I mean, they're going to raise prices regardless. There's also the
It's because
conspiracy that,
wait, before you continue, because the issue here is we're going back to you again, blaming all these other countries for this, but we're not blaming the people who benefit from it, the companies.
well, well, think about this. This is a key thing right there. In China, China's communist, which means any company there is technically owned by the government. So China absolutely benefits off of every single thing any company sitting in there does. That's one of the screwed up things about them
Yeah, but
is that that's
I would argue the same applies to us. It's just less indirect.
well, we're not communists.
We're
So
not, but
when I
you don't think
when I,
Elon Musk, who helped Trump win, is not going to benefit from this?
oh yeah, but what I'm saying is Elon Musk owns his company. America doesn't own his company. China owns the companies. You do not have private companies in a communist country because the the workforce and the companies have been turned over to quote unquote the people. The people is the government that runs it, which is the Communist Party. And we know that's how communism ends up working out.
Yeah, and I don't disagree with you. Just my issue is all these things are just distractions. By focusing on China, a thing we don't really have control over, we never focus on like the actual problem itself within our own country.
Well, we did up until the 90s. And that's what I'm saying. If we started focusing on growing our own food here,
But that should have been the goal first before this.
it was until in the 90s they got let into the World Trade Organization. China was never let into the World Trade Organization until Clinton let them in. And everybody was pissed at him for it. They were, what are you doing? Nobody's ever let him in the World Trade Organization because they have bad ethical practices and they're known to do espionage style things within their government. Not that we're not known to do that, but I mean, there's also the idea that one of the largest donators to all colleges in America is the CCP, Chinese Communist Party. And then you look at colleges don't promote labor like that. So you could say it's part of the conspiracy of dumbing America down. So we're not doing these labor jobs. So we just are consumers. And meanwhile, they're pulling all the goods and they're pulling all the money. China's economy has boomed crazy in the last ever since that happened. It went absolutely ape shit because they got let in the World Trade Organization.
And a sort of silver lining to that is it probably did drop price on goods for consumers,
Oh yeah,
but the cost is ethics, the cost is growing China and shrinking American industry.
right. And it's not about being against China or the Chinese people. It's about being against the CCP because that's who's running the shit over there. And just like I'm not a fan of our government, I'm not a fan of most of the other governments around the world because it's them doing all these little weird, funny trade things that you know, that we run into these problems to where we have to fix them by not getting ripped off anymore.
Is
And
there
I don't think, do what?
is there anything China specifically produces that we can't?
I don't know.
I don't know either.
Computer chips.
I guess there's Taiwan would be the other.
No, we used to produce Silicon Valley is called that because we can produce some computer
Okay,
chips
so we
here.
don't, but we could.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, which is why once again the focus should have been to build that first. I
Well,
don't
that's the thing is,
yeah,
and that's the thing is, we had a lot of companies, we had a lot of factories, and when they got let in the World Trade Organization, all the companies left because they were allowed to go to China because China was now part of the World Trade Organization.
that's the
So they were
companies
like,
and the government working together.
well, that was
You do.
they're actually working against the American government because the American government was like, if you're going to be here, you can't pollute as much as you want to, and you got a fucking minimum wage. You can't treat people like shit. You can't put people in sweatshops. You got all these American policies, and these companies were like, oh, if I go open up in China, I don't have to follow all that shit. You know how much money I'm going to save? Cool.
I
Let me
agree with
go
you. We
over there.
probably shouldn't trade with them at all if we can avoid it.
Right.
Yeah, but
You know,
If it's not China, it's India.
well, that's what I'm saying. Then we shouldn't be fucking with them either.
I think where we're
And
at,
then how long are you going to keep doing that until you target the companies?
Well, that's the thing is that what happens is the companies end up leaving the countries they're in to go to where they can make the money. You're not gonna, if you're a major corporation, you're not gonna hang around where the reason they went to China was because they were now allowed to. You couldn't have a company over there and be in the World Trade Organization because it was unethical. When they got let in, hey, now you can do that. So we can save millions. We don't have to pay people minimum wage. We don't have to do all of this. All we do is cut the CCP in a big fat chunk, and we're gravy.
the statement you've made is that um, we should look at the companies, not other countries doing this. But the reason, what, okay, how would you control these companies? It would be regulations. The reason they go to other countries is because of regulations here.
Yeah,
So targeting
because
the
they're
companies.
not the right regulations.
So what would it look like to hold companies responsible? It would mean to regulate them. If they're not doing it here, they're doing it in another country where those they don't have the same regulations. So it kind of either way comes back to we're not dealing with either that country or that company in another country, right?
Yeah,
And in China's case, they're kind of tied together, but
yeah.
There's countries that won't manufacture things that we allow here. I mean, hell, look at the FDA. High fructose corn syrup, which hopefully gets outlawed, is outlawed all over the fucking world. So if you're like Coca-Cola, can only sell the regular Coca-Cola with high fructose corn syrup in a handful of countries. That's why people like Mexican Coca-Cola because it's cane sugar,
yeah.
because it's illegal in a lot of other countries to sell something with high fructose corn syrup because they recognize it as being poisonous or not good for you. Along with a whole list of other shit that the FDA approves.
Mhm.
So it's the same concept. And I don't agree with the FDA. I hate the FDA. But
Yeah, it's not like we do things super
right,
ethically here.
I'm not I'm not being somebody that's against regulations. Once again, it goes back to me saying I'm not for tariffs because I'm not for any kind of regulations on shit.
You're not for government. Yeah.
Right. So I'm not really for it. Now, in this game that's being played, yes, I think that's a tight move. And if it was personally up to me, if it was my little tribe, and I was deciding who we traded with, I would be not trading with the tribe that was dumping shit into the river, and not trading with the tribe that tied children up and made them make the fucking moccasins. It's real simple. It's like, well, no, we're not going to trade with them because fuck them. And other tribes that are like ethical wouldn't, and then they can't trade anything, so they end up going, well, we got to change our shit, or we're going to dwindle into nothing.
But
You
I'm
know.
not opposed to that. I'm just saying what Trump doing right now is not that solution because it's too targeted. It's only three countries.
Well, I can't. That's what I'm saying. I can't speak to that. I agree with you on that. I mean, I don't. I can't because I haven't seen what he's doing laid out with that. Actually, I haven't heard much about the tariff thing. I've been hearing so much about him freeing people and everything else, and all this other shit going on. So, I mean, that's one of those things where it's like I can't, I can only wait to see what plays out when it comes to the numbers. You know, I
Yeah, and
mean, people are talking about, him trying to fucking purchase Canada anyway. So it ain't gonna matter if he tariffs. They won't have a tariff if they become part of America.
Yeah.
You know, so it's. I think that right now that is probably the least of our worries. Maybe not the least, but it's lower on the list of things when it comes to shit.
I mean,
I think if
we're gonna see in the next few days, though.
Yeah, it's like
well,
I'm actually glad we're doing this now because we're about to find out really soon one way or the
yeah, I think if nothing else, this should be driving people to be more self-sufficient because, you know,
That's true.
what do we really need? What are we really worried about losing? Our fucking cell phones or our garlic powder?
I mean, I'm a little
Most,
worried about losing those.
Both of those are kind of big concerns.
I mean, well, you can grow garlic.
Yeah, but we should have had that already in place before we
I
did.
mean, well, that's what I'm
I
saying.
don't think anyone's really arguing with you on that.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
it should have. I'm saying it should have stayed in place. We had it in place, but it should have stayed there.
But yeah, but now that we don't, we're already fucked. This isn't gonna solve that. That's my issue.
I don't. That's what I'm saying. I don't know. I don't. I don't. I don't know what else is.
This is like the equivalent of trying to build a commune where you're self-sufficient, but you don't have access to the supplies to do that.
I really think we have more access than we think we do. Um,
Yeah, just because we don't make things doesn't mean we couldn't. I
one
don't
of
actually know
thing,
a lot
yeah,
about that.
one of the things about America is our minerals here and our making of steel and ironworks and shit like that is pretty superior to the rest of the planet for whatever reason. I don't know if it's a geology thing. I don't have, but that's one of the only things that anybody else would have need from us for. But when we sell it to the rest of the world for cheap, there's no need to invade us. I've often said it. We're not a people that anybody wants to have to rule.
Hmm.
And our only resource here, we sell it off to everybody. And then now we're buying back shit that we can have been able to do, like garlic. Most garlic that you buy comes from China. So much food that comes from China we don't realize. Most of our vegetation, depending on what time of year, is not out of Southern California. It's coming from South America. Now, granted, I don't got a big deal with a lot of that because you get fruit out of season because of that, which is a luxury, you know. But, you
A
know,
lot of things that
yeah,
we could do without, for sure.
exactly. We have to get back to, and it goes back to us as a people. If we get out of the consumer mentality and we actually, I mean, if everybody fucking stood up and said, you know what, I'm not going to go eat at fucking McDonald's no more, that company would collapse in this, and at least here.
Yeah, that's an example of targeting the companies. That's what I want people to do instead of worrying about China
Well,
or the CCP or like.
well, and that's the thing is, none of us can have any control over what tariffs are going on.
Yeah, that's true.
What he did is what he did. He got put in office, what he did. I'm actually glad that something has happened. It might not be the exact fix, but it's something that's gonna shake some shit up. And if nothing else, maybe it will fuck up the food supply coming out of China. And maybe people will have to say, you know what, I gotta fucking buy domestic. I need to go buy from the local fucking farmers market down the street instead of goddamn going to Walmart to buy, cheap produce off the rack, you
And
know.
that, yeah. Now,
But the
the
issue,
downside is at very best case scenario, consumer prices stay the same, but we're not going to see price reductions. Worst case scenario, consumers are going to have to pay more for things. But at a certain point, we're just not going to buy things if they're so expensive, which will cause the companies to drop their prices.
or
Well, and
or
well,
cause
it's also
inflation.
well, it's also
Yeah.
supply and demand. because when it comes to necessity, and that might not be a bad thing for a consumerist, you know, situation. When people get pushed to just necessity, they stop buying a bunch of luxury. So it's like, well, I guess I don't need to buy all this, but I can still afford to buy the basic shit because making bread is cheap. So people can still sell homemade bread cheap, you know, it's the basics. People can still get chickens and feed them and sell you eggs up and down the street.
Yeah, but
And
Americans aren't ready.
I mean, that's
I'll have to
the
find
thing
out.
is that's the thing is that's unfortunately that's irrelevant. And
Yeah,
it's one of those things that has never really been relevant when it comes to the world and the changes that occur. And a
that's
lot
true.
of times that's necessary for it to,
Either
you
adapt or
know,
you won't, basically.
right.
And that kind of sucks, but
It
you're right.
does.
You're right, though. It doesn't really have any bearing on it.
It's like there's been so many attempts at trying to figure out this easy way at shifting the world back into some specific direction that everybody seems to agree that it should be going. That I don't know that most people really understand it. They're just shaking their heads in agreement because it sounds right. So, it kind of goes back to tundra law view. I think that that might be necessary. I know that I feel at least confidently prepared, mentally prepared, knowledge wise to have to deal with, you know, taking on survival.
I mean,
And
you're making a good point here that while we might not have convenient, cheap products, the good news is people will become less reliant on it. Now, that's that's not really like a sell to a consumer because you want the cheap garbage you don't need.
well, yeah, I mean, I got to have the brand new iPhone so I can get a really good picture of me at the protest about, you know,
Here,
big energy.
here's my. I'm gonna put out a prediction, and then we can end it after that.
Yeah, that's cool.
So here's my prediction of what I think is gonna happen. I'm not opposed to all the things you just said, Neef. I agree with you. I just feel like this isn't the solution for that. Like if we actually went full hardcore, build like the actual infrastructure, made the factories and made tariffs, but on everything, not just specifically three countries, we could have made it work. But here's what I think will happen instead is tariffs will come in, everything will be more expensive, Americans will suffer for a good while. There'll be like a small depression, and then all our companies are just going to start buying from India or other countries, and then we're going to be back in the same problem again.
Yeah, so you've presented your case well, which is that you're not opposed to tariffs, but they should be across the board. They shouldn't be targeted to specific countries, and we should have the infrastructure in place before we do that.
Yeah.
I don't think any of us are in disagreement about that.
No, I absolutely agree. It should be pretty much not just, it shouldn't absolutely just be three countries. It could be different depending on the country,
Yeah, it seems like the
but
way Trump's doing it's not.
yeah, and that actually sparks my interest on that. And I'm gonna poke around and look more into that and watch the change of that a little
Because
more
It's also
actively.
interesting if it is going to create a lot of trade with India. There's a lot of weird stuff going on with our administration in India. So
so think of it like
yeah,
this. So you know who's really pro India right now? Elon
Elon.
Musk. Elon Musk is really pro India right now. So think of it like this. I want you to imagine a world where Trump doesn't really care about us. He's just looking after the people who put him in power. He introduces these tariffs. China does suffer. Mexico suffers. Canada suffers. We suffer. But now you're opening. You have this opening where companies in America can now choose which country can be the next China. They're the ones who are going to profit the most.
You're saying we're trading one for another, basically.
Yeah,
You think it's gonna fall on India, and India will end up being the next China?
yep,
I
because
mean,
because of the ineffective way we're doing it. Because
right.
I don't think Trump is really looking for like us. He's
I
just
mean,
looking.
really, the easy way to look at that is literally look at the major market manufacturer markets of the world, like chip manufacturing and stuff like that. I mean, major manufacturers, and look where they're based, and look where they're moving. And if we see them all moving to India, then we know what's up. I don't know India to be a country that's got a lot of. Well, I think they are kind of a. They're not. I don't think they're. I think they're up there in like technological manufacturing, but I don't know that they're like one of the major ones. They're not like China is, when it comes to manufacturing um
Yeah, or
technology.
or another way to think of it is like, okay, you just mentioned you're anti people buying from Walmart, for example, right? This would
Yeah, I
be
mean,
this would be like making a law or taxing them so that people stop buying from Walmart, but instead people will just start buying from Target or some other company
right.
instead of being self-sufficient. That's the issue. Like you need to focus on the self-sufficient part first before you do anything.
Well,
And
well, the
because that's not
idea,
happening.
the idea also behind that is that, and I hear this a lot, is that if you charge a company more, they're just going to charge a consumer more. Well, what happens there is if Walmart has to charge you more because they're paying more,
Yeah, and then we
you're
just
going
buy from Target.
then you're going to naturally go to Target. So Walmart ends up having to match those prices, and then they end up losing money. So that's what forces them to go, hey, we shouldn't be over here in this other country. We should bring our work back over there where our market is. But you have
Unless they're
global
all in bed
companies,
together and lock their prices in.
right? And that's the thing is, and you've got that kind of shit going on. You also have the idea of, are we going to get tariffed in other countries? I mean, we are getting tariffed in other countries.
No, it already
So,
happened. They already Mexico and
it,
Canada already agreed to tariff us.
Yeah.
well, I mean, China's been tariffing the shit out of us for years, and that's the thing is, a lot of countries have. That's one of the major things that Trump was talking about when he first came in. He's like, we've been getting screwed by all these other major economic players for years because they charge us out the ass to sell anything there. So none of our companies here send anything there to sell because it's too expensive. And we take all kind of stuff from them without charging them anything.
And you make a good point too, Neif, that we allow this to happen as a people because we like cheap bullshit.
Yep.
And so we're in favor of America just bleeding money
Right.
because on an individual level, it it makes things easier.
Yeah. I
There's it
mean,
is it's pretty nuanced. There's a lot to this.
Yeah,
yeah. I mean,
but my main issue is that's not going to change.
I mean, you make a good point too that it's not going to get cheaper.
that's the
Nothing's
thing
gonna-
is and I agree it won't change on its own because it hasn't. It just gets worse and worse. That's why I'm glad something is happening. It might not be the fix it, but at least something is happening and it's not the same. We're getting screwed left and right. And if the shit starts to go in a direction, it can always be changed. You know what I'm saying? That's one of the things is if something major occurs, shit can change and more tariffs can be added, shit can be pulled away because that's how our government's supposed to work,
But
you know.
the more tariffs are imposed over and over again, who pays the tariffs? Who's paying that tax?
Um, well, like I said, it's
Companies do, and then they put it on us.
companies and they have the choice whether or not they're going to put it on us.
So which choice will they make?
The
It
answer is they'll put it on us if they can.
if they
But
can.
but
If we have domestic competition, they'll lose out to it because we'll just go to domestic, and especially when it's like, hey, we're cheaper and we're made in America, and I mean, when I was coming up, that was a huge thing. My mother had a catalog that came in that was a list of companies that were still American companies because a lot of them were moving. And so that way she could look if she was ordering stuff or products we couldn't find anymore in places because the company had moved out and it just didn't ship there anymore. And she was able to order shit factory direct, you know, and hit them up for catalogs because these were American companies. And you stop seeing that as a drive, as a prideful thing, you know. Back when I was coming up, if something had made in China on it, it was thought to be crap. There's a country or a city in a country over there. I think it's in India. That's called USA. It's a manufacturing city. It's USA. So if your tag says made in USA, you got to make sure it's hyphen. It's uh got dots. It's U period S period A period because it might not be United States of America. It might be USA. I'm not shitting you.
That's
You know,
hilarious.
yeah. And I mean that's how far places would go to make it look like their products. I mean, that was a big bootlegging thing that went on for years through the 90s and the 80s was this says made in America, but it wasn't made in America because
But
people that would sell it. Now that's not a thing.
There's a national pride's pretty low where the cool hip thing to do in America is to say you hate America.
Right. And
Yeah.
it'd be like I want industry here that's, redneck and blue collar and America, I want my guns and my truck and my job. And I mean, no, not necessarily. But it's good to,
that that
yeah,
that trick you just mentioned, I feel like Trump is doing that. He's using people like that to pull that trick.
I mean, maybe,
And we'll
maybe.
see, but just I'm telling you, that's my prediction. That's what's gonna happen. It's just a
We'll
trick.
see.
It's like it's a trick where he's saying this is the reason we're doing it, but that's not what they really want.
Yeah, I think he has self-interest for sure. Now, will he appeal to a base so he can get reelected? I think that's also likely. But I don't think any of these people have pure intentions for sure.
Yeah.
It has to do with intentions aligning.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Now,
But our
more than
intentions can never
anything,
align with these people. That's the issue.
they can be
I
more
don't
in
think,
alignment
I
with
don't think, well, I don't think
theory.
ours, yeah, I don't think ours would align with theirs, but I think what aligns with Trump aligns more with the common American citizen.
Well, but I think he's a sheep and wolf. He's a wolf in sheep's clothing.
I agree with that.
Well, that's fine too. I mean, but
Denise's point is change is necessary.
yeah,
So shaking things up a bit or a
it's a
lot,
lot. It's a
shaking
fucking
things up
lot.
a lot, it'll either get significantly worse or it'll get better.
Right.
Um, I think inevitably, though, things are at the very best case scenario, things are going to certainly things are not going to get cheaper for the individual. They might get a lot more expensive. I
And
guess we'll see.
and most likely we won't get to the solution that people actually want or that you want, Neif. And
Well, I
that's
mean, yeah, I don't think that's something that's just going to happen
Yeah.
in a few years with one dude. But I know that had he not been elected and we had 4 more years of the same thing, it absolutely would not have fixed the problem, and it would have just kept going in the same direction it was. And as a country, we'd have continued to hemorrhage money, and I mean hemorrhage money. I mean, as the money we've handed to military shit around this globe, people talk about how much it would cost to end fucking hunger, or to send everybody to college. And then you can multiply those figures by three, and that's what we've sent to countries to
Yeah.
quote unquote aid and some bullshit fucking,
Yep.
you know, here's three times that amount of money to blow shit up.
It's like I'm not confident that Trump is being honest with people. I know everyone else is lying. I know everyone else
Right.
is shit.
Yep.
Like the best, I mean, everyone should hope that he's honest, you know?
Yeah. I mean,
But
at
I
this
mean, I
point,
I also think he does pander. I think he says things.
yeah.
I mean, like example that you showed me when he was talking about tariffs was like that's just not true. Like that's not how it works. And he's not stupid.
Yeah, he's not stupid.
So he is being dishonest about what he's saying. Now there is some to counter that, there's some truth in what he's saying. Is it in theory would cost other countries more if the people buying them were like, we're not going to buy from you. But also, you're making a good point too, where the tax is literally not on. He said the tax was on other countries when that's just simply not the
Yeah, it's
case.
just a straight up lie.
Yeah, so it might, in theory, in like sort of the most charitable case, it might cost them more money, but it's an unfactual statement to say that it is a tax on them when it's actually just a tax on the company that's buying the things.
Yeah, but the reason he does this is because there's like power and ambiguity.
Yeah.
By doing
Schrodinger's douchebag.
by being
Meta irony.
so this is what I meant about the whole wolf in sheep's clothing is by being purposely ambiguous, he can still get support of Neif, who does have the right ideas. It's just
Yeah, that yeah,
Well,
and also
but
Neef's not in support of Trump.
no, I know, but
no,
I'm not saying I'm just saying Neif, but I mean just people who are in support of Trump.
but
Both sides.
I only support politicians against my will because
Yeah.
I don't want to pay the taxes that I have stolen from,
Hmm.
and that is the only way I support anything to do with the federal or state government.
Well, Trump just introduced the biggest taxes we've had in forever.
Well, like I said, we're already paying in this state the highest fucking state sales tax and cranked up property tax, and you
Yeah.
and income tax is another shitstorm too. It's I
Well,
Okay.
don't, I don't, I don't disagree. I'm just, I'm glad that something is happening. And because it is necessary, I think that this population does need to get a little bit of a fucking slap back into, hey, you need to be more self sufficient because you also need to be more individualist with thought.
Hmm.
Because I think that went hand in hand. Our domestication as a people, as a species, has caused us to get lazy in all sides of that. So now we're, you know, so used to being pandered to and being pampered and, you know, feeling like we deserve the fucking quote unquote American dream
Hmm.
that the thought of having to step out of that mentality is too frightening to people. It feels like a slight, but it's, if you don't believe in nepotism or generational wealth, then you should have no problem stepping out of any wealth that you've managed to be born into and go back to growing a garden. You know what I'm saying?
That's a good point. Yeah. It's like
You know,
smaller scale,
yeah,
like national nepotism.
yeah. It's like, I mean, if you're really highly against all of this that's going on, then being jumping off of the grid as much as you can is the best way to do it because now you're not supporting this government or any other fucking government.
Yeah. Until they show up with tanks and Waco you.
Right. So they show up with tanks and Waco.
Yeah. I know you really like to like contend and have like not you're not I wouldn't say confrontational or like looking for a fight, but you want to engage with opposing ideas, which I think is great. That's
Mhm.
a unfortunately for you, I think we're all on the same page about all this.
Yeah.
Like we
Same.
all kind of agree
Yeah.
about this.
Yeah. No, I mean, I really, you know, I'm saying there's not nothing that you said that I'm like, that's not absolutely untrue. You know, I mean, that very well could happen. Your prediction is not,
Yeah,
you
like
know,
here's how I feel.
it's not far fetched to
Here's what I'll
me.
say, and then we can end it on that note because I do have to go at some point. I'll end it with this note. We all can point at the same problems, and Trump is offering a solution. We just disagree on what the outcome of that is. That's it.
I guess.
Yeah. I mean, I don't claim to, I haven't given that much prediction into it. You know, I'd
Yeah,
say,
I don't really know what's gonna happen. I don't really have any strong feelings about it, I guess.
yeah,
But we'll come back to this video in the future once we do
Yeah.
see like the
yeah,
actual.
yeah.
We'll
Well,
definitely
absolutely.
visit soon.
All
We'll
right.
absolutely revisit this.
All right, we can end it there.
Yeah, David, thanks
All
for
right. Well,
doing this.
all right, Alice.
Yeah. We'll see you next week.